What in the World is supported in part by the World Affairs Council of Greater Reading.
The World Affairs Council of Greater Reading is the leading educational organization promoting understanding and enlightenment on global issues. I am Mike Sutton. Welcome back on this Tuesday evening, March 5th, I believe. We had that right. We were talking about that before the show. 7 p.m. We're live today, back on our regularly scheduled time, and this is going to be a fun show. We're starting a little bit late, so I'm going to jump right in because we are definitely going to run out of time. Good friend of mine on the show today, strategist, consultant, sustainability expert. He's worked with organizations like the White House, World Bank, Walmart, Johnson & Johnson, Disney, the EPA. He's testified before Congress, has been quoted in NPR, Good Morning America, CNN, the New York Times, and many more. A lot of these I didn't even know about him. My good friend Scott Case, welcome to the show.
Very cool. Thank you. It's
Thanks for joining me today, Scott.
You left out Reading Environmental Advisory Council and Berks Nature and all the really important
I was
things,
starstruck by the big names. So.
It's all about Reading today, man.
I'll have to get your signature after the show. Thanks for coming on. I know you as a sustainability expert. I've heard you speak before. And so let's just frame the conversation right off the bat. If I think of sustainability, and maybe it's just me, I think of environmentalism. So just to set how we're going to talk about this, just give us a definition for sustainability.
Yeah, wow. That's huge. So there's like this huge continuum of definitions of sustainability. So you've got some people on one end that really think about sustainability as, from a corporate perspective, is the company profitable? Will the company continue? And at the other end of the continuum, you have the community that looks at people, planet, and profits. So they look at the environmental impacts, they look at the economic impacts, and they look at the impacts on human health. So there's kind of a big, broad continuum. So it depends on where you want to be on that continuum.
So there's a completely non-environmental aspect to it. Just can the company continue to run on profits and stay afloat?
There are some people who define sustainability very, very narrowly. Yeah. I think the original use of the term kind of dates back to the late 1980s. And it began kind of as a critique of companies not looking at their environmental impact. And it kind of grew from there to look at environmental and social impacts. What are the impacts from a company on the local environment, the global environment? What are the impacts on the local community and the broader global community? But other people have tried to keep it in a very, very narrow definition.
That's why I thought this would be such an interesting topic to get into as the World Affairs Council, because yes, there are environmental impacts, but there are just pure capitalist motivations. There are wide-ranging impact from looking at this. And as you were saying before the show, some of the companies most interested in this are the largest multinational companies in the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's driving that?
Well, so it's kind of an interesting thing. So if you look at sustainability as a great big huge tent, there's a bunch of entrances into that circus tent. And some people come in from a purely economic perspective. Some people come in purely from and I say this lovingly, but they come in through a tree-hugging hippie freak perspective, and other people try and come in and balance all of those things. But once you're inside that tent, the conversations are all remarkably related. But what's happened kind of on a global perspective, from a business view, you have different countries around the world that are tackling environmental or social justice issues from a slightly different perspective. But if you're a big global company, pick a Walmart or a McDonald's or a General Electric, they don't operate in just one country. So they're hoping to build products in lots of different places. They're hoping to sell products in lots of different places. And so sustainability has become a framework for them to understand the differences in each of the different markets.
So in a case like that, how much of it really is environmental?
It depends. I look at it all as like, if I'm working with business leaders, I say, let's look at all of this from a business perspective. But there are environmental impacts of your business and human health impacts from your business. So pick something Darden. Darden owns lots of different restaurants, including Red Lobster. Okay, Red Lobster has a small problem. They're running out of fish. So when you start looking at where you are fishing, where you're gathering the fish to serve at a place like Red Lobster, an environmental issue like running out of fish might hurt your business.
It's kind of core to your business model.
It's core to the business model. Look at something like Starbucks. Starbucks sells an awful lot of coffee. Coffee grows best at a certain temperature, right? Certain elevation, certain temperature. And as global warming continues, right, no matter what the cause of global warming, as it continues, it actually makes it more and more difficult to grow coffee. So a company like Starbucks has a business interest in getting those issues addressed.
That is really interesting because you often hear about the business interest on the other side, fossil fuels, transportation industry, things like that, that could almost be considered counter to the environment, depending on your perspective. And then you've got other businesses that have a very deeply vested interest in making sure these things continue to produce and thrive.
And that's what's fun. So what's interesting from a sustainability perspective, when you start looking at triple bottom line, you find out the companies are no longer competing just on price. They're no longer competing just on quality. If they want to attract the right kinds of workers, like the smart young millennial workers, like yourself, right? They realize they have to actually care about broader global environmental issues because more and more millennials care about those kinds of things. So they hire better employees when they can tie what they do to a broader global mission.
Do you? I'm curious, just based on the way you framed this, the political impact. How do these companies end up getting involved politically to make sure that their business can continue to thrive?
So that's where things get fun and interesting, because what you can see when you really watch what companies are doing, I always look at the political piece as kind of a protect what we have piece. Yeah. So we don't want change on the political side. We're looking for stability. But that same focus on looking for stability, when you look at it from a supply chain perspective, in order to keep things the same, you have to change. So you have to actually find new ways to grow coffee. McDonald's is looking at, Tyson Foods was the most interesting example. Tyson Foods, think chicken. They have just hired someone to look at plant-based proteins. So they're realizing if they want to continue to grow as a company and to serve more and more food, it's going to be more profitable for them to sell plant-based fake meat than actual chicken.
Very interesting. And we've talked before about some of the business impacts of going for these sustainability initiatives, reducing your carbon footprint, improving your overall profitability, the health of the employees. I mean, do you have a sense of, like, if from your standpoint, if you had to pick, like, what's the most unexpected consequence that comes from these kinds of projects? Does anything come to mind?
Ooh, the most unexpected. I think one of the more unexpected is how many companies are actually realizing it's incredibly profitable. So I spent a number of years working with Walmart, and it was fascinating when they began to realize that if they looked at their business from an environmental perspective, they found ways to make money. So looking at it, like finding a way to reduce the amount of stuff they throw away. When they realized, wait a minute, we're paying someone to haul away our trash. And we started talking about there's cash in the trash. Some of that trash is really valuable. You could recycle it. You could actually earn money doing it. So they began to realize, wait a minute, rather than paying someone to haul away our trash, someone's going to pay us for it. Wow, that's a great thing. So it's an environmental story and a financial story.
Yeah, it's such a cool contrast between the kind of traditional, as you said, tree-hugging hippie environmentalist aspect of it and the pure, straight, commercial profitability capitalism side. Let's. I think we've got a call coming in. What have we got?
Yes. Good evening. How are you?
Great. How are you today? What's your question?
Well, first of all, I agree with everything that you fellows have been talking about. I have a question that is really related to it. In industrialized countries, the future impact of AI, robotics, and autonomous vehicles, autonomous distribution centers and workplaces, which will displace workers in mass within the next 20 years. Do you see that, in addition to the environmental issues you're talking about, causing within the industrialized countries political instability, really a malcontented environment with people who have jobs versus people who don't, the ones who are displaced taking it out on both their political leaders and business leaders, and really creating a pretty bad global situation in the industrialized world? What do you think about that?
It's a really cool question, and there's lots of implications to that. I think I recognize your voice. I'm pretty sure you've called in before, so thanks for calling in.
Yes, I have.
Today.
I love this show.
Awesome, thank you.
I love that question because you're my favorite nerdy buddy who would talk about the AI piece.
Well, it's a really interesting question because I've been, saying for a long time that at some point we just have more labor than we need to run the country. Mm-hmm. So there's the sustainability from a business standpoint that says if you can automate things, that helps your overall business. But then there's the sustainability from a social standpoint.
Yes.
How can a society of people who don't have jobs to do support a business like that?
I love it. So let's play with this a little bit. We need another hour for today's show here. So the fun thing, when you look at it from a sustainability perspective, right, the broadest sense of the term, people issues, planet issues, profit issues, the real question is what's the right balance between those different, there's some tension among them. And so when you think about a world in which AI has kind of taken over, there's more and more automation, the question becomes, what do all the people do? And then what are the environmental impacts of what the people are doing? So there become kind of some fun issues around keeping people engaged with a purpose. But the AI piece is, from your perspective?
Well, already having huge impact, first of all.
Right.
And will only continue to do so. And the automation is probably the next biggest piece. Self-driving cars is going to displace entire industries. It's already having huge impact on the insurance industry.
Yep.
I know insurance companies that are preparing to completely revamp their auto insurance structure because they're not going to need the same agents and coverage and liabilities. The trucking industry, the transportation industry, all are going to be hugely affected, and that's only going to continue.
Yep.
What are people going to do?
and so it gets fun too. So just pick any of those industries. You mentioned like insurance and trucking. So for the insurance agents, insurance companies right now are already making it more and more difficult to get insurance along the coasts where hurricane intensity is increasing and property damage is increasing. They're already looking at, hey, as sea levels rise, what happens all up and down the Mississippi and what happens to other major rivers and to flooding. So they're already looking at the world from that perspective. And they also have to balance things like you're talking about. What's the auto industry doing? Trucking is the same kind of thing. People are talking in different parts of the world about a carbon tax or a carbon cap and trade program. So the emissions from the truck become really, really important. So more and more people are moving towards the electrification of trucks. And you combine that with automation, it's definitely fun.
There are definitely going to be shifts. I have no concern that there won't be work to do. My boy's getting ready to go study actuarial science. And people will ask, well, won't AI kind of eliminate the need for that kind of analysis? And they're already seeing that the AI kind of breaks down because it's only as good as the data you feed it. Yeah. And they can't feed it diverse enough data sets. So there's the next level of how do we address these kinds of problems?
Well, and on that particular question, what's fun is Richard Nixon, back in the 70s, actually set up committees for what are people going to do when there's only a four-hour workday. Because they were so convinced automation was going to like obliterate so many potential jobs. Who were literally worried about what are people going to do.
Well, I hope we get there.
I've got big plans.
So let's talk about kind of a more general. When we talked about this show in the first place, I brought up the idea of like a healthcare impact. So it's easy to see that employees will be healthier in a green building. What's the broader perspective there?
Yeah, I mean, so you can take that in a number of different ways. Employees are healthier in a green building. They're also more productive. Students in green schools actually have higher test scores. So there's a lot of kind of interesting aspects there. If you take a step further back, you look at the impacts of global warming on disease and disease vectors. So diseases that we used to consider tropical diseases are moving north. So things like West Nile and Lyme disease are actually spreading further and further north. mosquitoes, which are the biggest killer on the planet, right? Mosquitoes kill more people than anything else. The breeding seasons are lengthening because the winters aren't killing off the bugs. So we're going to see all sorts of increasing diseases from around climate change.
And as you pointed out before, if you're a business that has customers along the coasts or facilities along the coast, you have a vested interest in making sure that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
All right, we knew we were going to run out of time.
That went fast.
We're not quite there yet, but let's take a look at some of the upcoming events that the World Affairs
Please.
Council has. I know that you have been to a couple of our events. We've got a
they're
big one
awesome.
coming up this Friday. It's actually not Wednesday, March 8th. It is actually Friday, March 8th, and we're going to have our International Women's Day breakfast. We do this every year. It's one of our biggest events of the year. And we're going to hear from Laura Hendricks. She's the Executive Vice President of Global Programs at the Grameen Foundation. And she has a background working in microfinance on financial inclusion programs to some of the poorest people in Africa. So we're expecting, looking forward to a really good program this Friday, one of our headline events of the year.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then next Wednesday, and this will be the second March event, the World Affairs Council is in partnership with the Jewish Federation of Reading to present Dr. Aaron Lerman. And he's a reserve colonel and vice president of the Jerusalem Institute for Strategic Studies. Nice resume. Teaches the Middle East students programs at Shalem College in Jerusalem, postgraduate programs at Tel Aviv University, and the National Defense College, expert in Israel's foreign relations and on the Middle East. So that's going to be a great one, very
Excellent.
timely topic that we'll hear about
Yeah.
next Wednesday. And then we have to go out into April. This is another one kind of right up your alley.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Dan Myers, at the International Policy Manager for the National Geographic Pristine Seas, with a background in environmental policy and communications. And I'm not going to go out much further than that. I will, however, mention that we do have these great programs. We have a lunch and a breakfast every month. We have our Great Decisions program going on right now. We have World Quest coming up, which is a great way to support the students. So if you want to support students in the community, if you want to be involved in the World Affairs Council, head over to the website. You can find out about these programs, also get information on how to join.
Excellent.
What have you got going on, Scott?
Lots of stuff. I think one of the, we talked kind of big global, I know this is World Affairs
Yeah.
Council, but a lot of these global issues are affecting us right here in Reading. And so there have been some really fascinating, interesting meetings recently. I am one of several members of the Reading Environmental Advisory Council. The city has a new city planner who has come in, and a wonderful guy by the name of David Hunter, and he's begun asking us and others, what's the future of Reading supposed to look like? So at the Environmental Advisory Council, we're actually asking that, I have this fantasy, right, that the city of Reading, our very own city right here, becomes the greenest city on the East Coast, the most sustainable city on the East Coast. This is a wonderful way of attracting new investments in the city, attracting new talent to come to the city. Think about green buildings. Think about a solar-powered pagoda. Think about zero waste and restaurants that are composting. There's all these kind of crazy, funky things people think about on the West Coast, and we have so much opportunity to do it right here in Reading.
What are some resources we can direct people to if they're interested in that locally?
Sure. Well, one of them actually would be the folks at Burke's Nature. So Burke's Nature has done all sorts of interesting things. This is a report that Burke's Nature put together just talking about what local companies, I think there's about 60 local companies, and some of the neat things that they're doing to make money going green. Some of them who aren't necessarily doing it for environmental reasons. It's just they're out to make money, and turns out the environment benefits. But Burke's Nature also has been for a decade now tracking various environmental indicators. And Burke's Nature just came out with a 10-year report. Here's how the different indicators, the air quality, land impacts, recycling, energy efficiency, how those things are kind of either moving in positive directions or maybe we have some work still to do. So check out burkesnature.org.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Okay, we've got 30 seconds left.
30 seconds.
What was the first thing you remember striking your interest with respect to sustainability?
Third grade teacher teaching us about acid rain and ocean pollution, and she put a white sock on the muffler of her car, and it got super dark within 24 hours. I was an asthmatic kid. That was a powerful moment.
The power of education. I mean, third grade, that's
teacher.
incredible. And it stuck with you for this long.
Always. I learned in third grade that the motor companies were trying to kill me.
That
It's
is
a problem.
incredible.
So-
And like, right at top of mind. I didn't prepare you for that
No,
question.
you
It's like
didn't.
right there. That's
So
awesome.
That's a powerful memory.
Well, thanks for coming on the show today,
Dude,
Scott.
thanks.
This is a great time. We'll have to
awesome
do
show.
this again.
Absolutely. When we have more time. You need a 2-hour show.
Have more time. We could stay here all night. We knew coming in that this was,
It's
27
always-
minutes was going to be no problem
That's
whatsoever.
right. We'll go find a local adult beverage and continue the conversation.
We'll still be there in the morning. All right. Thanks for coming to see the show this evening. Join us at breakfast on Friday for our International Women's Day program. Check out World Affairs Council, whackredding.com. Oh, I'm sorry, that's not even right. It's whackredding.org.
Oh, I don't know.
Man,
Fix the
mistakes
site.
today. whackredding.org/join. And thanks for watching the show tonight.
Very cool.
What in the World is supported in part by the World Affairs Council of Greater Reading.